The city of Los Angeles was loud and busy, as it always is. Cars honked their horns on the streets, and people rushed past each other without looking up. The sun was bright, beating down on the pavement, but in one small corner of the city, there was a quiet place. It was a small flower shop tucked away between a big coffee shop and a bank. Most people walked right past it without noticing, but for those who did stop, it was like entering a different world. The air inside smelled sweet and fresh, like roses and wet earth. And the noise of the traffic outside seemed to disappear the moment you opened the door. On this particular afternoon, the bell above the door chimed softly. A tall man walked in. He was wearing a dark hoodie that had seen better days, a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes, and worn-out sneakers. He didn't walk like a movie star. He didn't have a group of people following him with cameras. He walked like someone who just wanted a moment of peace. It was Keanu Reeves. To the world, he was a famous actor, but in that shop, he was just another customer looking for a bit of beauty. He nodded politely to the shopkeeper, an older woman with kind eyes, and then he turned to walk slowly down the rows of flowers. He wasn't in a hurry. He ran his fingers gently over the petals of a lily, then leaned in to smell a bright yellow sunflower. He seemed lost in thought, maybe thinking about a friend, or maybe just enjoying the silence. The shop was quiet except for the hum of a refrigerator in the corner, the sound of the shopkeeper arranging stems at the counter. It was a peaceful moment, the kind everyone needs in the middle of a busy week. But as Keanu stood there, looking at the colors of nature, he began to feel that something else was happening in the shop. It wasn't a sound at first, but a feeling. He turned his head slightly toward the front counter. That was when he saw the boy. The boy was standing on the other side of the glass counter, and he looked very small against the big display of flowers behind him. He looked to be about 10 years old. He was wearing a t-shirt that was a little too big for him, hanging loose around his shoulders, and jeans that were frayed at the bottom. His hair was messy, as if he had been running, but he wasn't running now. He was standing very still, completely focused on the task in front of him. Keanu watched quietly. He didn't want to stare, but he couldn't look away. The boy had dumped a pile of money onto the glass counter. It wasn't a stack of neat bills. It was a messy collection of crumpled $1 bills, a lot of coins, and a few quarters that looked like they had been saved for a long time. The boy's hands were moving carefully, separating the coins into piles. One pile for dimes, one for quarters, and one for nickels. Every time he thought he had finished counting, he would look up at the price tag hanging from a flower arrangement in the cooler. His face would drop, and he would start counting again. It was a sad cycle to watch. The coins clinked softly against the glass, a quiet sound that seemed very loud in the small shop. You could see the frustration building up in his small shoulders. Keanu moved a little closer, pretending to look at some greeting cards on a nearby rack so he could see better. He saw the boy bite his lip, a sign of nervousness. The boy was not just buying candy. He was on a serious mission. He reached into his pocket and pulled out another handful of change, adding it to the pile. He was giving everything he had. It was clear that this money meant a lot to him. It probably took him a long time to save it. The shopkeeper wiped her hands on her apron and looked over at the boy. She waited patiently, seeing that he was struggling. She didn't rush him. She had a gentle smile on her face, but Keanu could see a look of sympathy in her eyes. She knew what was going to happen before the boy did. She knew the math. She knew that the pile of coins on the counter, while impressive for a young boy, was not going to be enough for what he wanted. The boy finally stopped counting. He took a deep breath, pushed the pile of money forward, and looked up at the shopkeeper. His voice was quiet but steady. He pointed to a large, beautiful bouquet of white orchids in the glass refrigerator. They were elegant and expensive, wrapped in nice paper with a satin ribbon. "How much for those ones?" the boy asked. The shopkeeper hesitated for just a second. She didn't want to disappoint him. "Those are the premium white orchids," she said softly. "They are $45. The boy looked back down at his money. He counted it one last time, his fingers moving frantically. He whispered the numbers to himself. 5, 10, 15, 20. He stopped when he reached 32. He was $13 short. He didn't have a credit card. He didn't have a bank account. He only had what was in front of him. Keanu watched the boy's face closely. It was heartbreaking. The boy's eyes, which had been full of hope just a moment ago, suddenly dimmed. He looked at the orchids, then back at his small pile of coins. You could see him doing the calculations in his head, trying to figure out which coins he could take back so he could still afford something. He looked around the shop, pointing to a smaller bunch of daisies in a bucket. "What about these?" he asked, trying to hide the sadness in his voice. "Those are $12, the shopkeeper said. The boy looked at the orchids one last time. He wanted the orchids. He didn't want the daisies. The orchids were special. They were for someone who needed something special. But he didn't have enough money. The weight of the situation sat heavy on him. He slowly started to pull some of the dollars back from the pile, resigning himself to the fact that he couldn't get what he really wanted. He looked like he was fighting hard not to cry right there in the middle of the shop. Keanu felt a pull in his chest. He knew that feeling. He knew what it was like to want to give something to someone you love, to make them smile, but to be stopped by a lack of money. It is a helpless feeling. It makes you feel small. But seeing this young boy, giving his absolute everything just to buy a flower, touched him deeply. It wasn't about the money. It was about the effort. It was about the love driving that effort. The shopkeeper waited, her hand hovering over the register, ready to help him make the smaller purchase. She felt bad for him too. The whole shop felt heavy with the boy's disappointment. The silence stretched out. The boy's shoulders slumped forward. He was just about to tell the shopkeeper to forget the orchids, that he would take the cheap ones. Then Keanu took a step forward. He didn't make a big scene. He didn't clear his throat to announce his presence. He just walked quietly toward the counter. He didn't look like a celebrity trying to save the day. He looked like a human being who wanted to help another human being. He could have just paid for the flowers anonymously, but he saw the boy's face. He saw the shame in the boy's eyes. He knew that if he just threw money at the problem, it might make the boy feel small. He needed to handle this carefully. He needed to be gentle. He stopped right next to the boy, close enough that the boy looked up, startled. The boy's eyes went wide when he saw who was standing next to him. He recognized the face from movies, but in that moment he was too confused and sad to be excited about meeting a star. He just looked at Keanu with a mixture of surprise and worry. Keanu looked down at the boy and offered a soft, reassuring smile. He didn't look at the shopkeeper yet. He kept his eyes on the boy, connecting with him. The air in the shop seemed to shift. The disappointment that filled the room was suddenly met with a wave of calm kindness. Keanu didn't say anything at first. He just looked at the pile of coins, then at the orchids, and then back at the boy. He was about to change the boy's day. But he was going to do it in a way that respected the boy's dignity. The boy stood frozen, his hand still resting on his pile of coins. He didn't know what was happening, but for the first time since he walked into the shop, he didn't feel alone. The boy didn't know what to do. 1 second he was counting pennies, feeling sad about the math not working out, and the next second, a famous actor was standing right next to him. It was the kind of thing that happens in movies, not in real life. The boy's mouth opened a little bit, but no sound came out. He looked at the shopkeeper, then back at the man in the hoodie. Keanu didn't look like a movie star right then. He looked like a regular guy. He had a little bit of stubble on his face, and his eyes looked kind. Not tired or bored like some adults look when they talk to kids. Keanu leaned against the counter. Keeping his distance so he wouldn't crowd the boy, he didn't want to scare him. He just stood there, relaxed and calm. He looked down at the pile of coins spread out on the glass. There were a lot of pennies there, mixed with nickels and dimes. It looked like hours of work, or maybe months of saving allowance. It was heavy with meaning. "Those white ones are really nice," Keanu said. His voice was low and quiet. It wasn't loud or booming. He spoke like he was sharing a secret. "Orchids are special. They take a long time to grow." The boy blinked. He looked at the flowers in the cooler and then back at his money. He swallowed hard. "Yeah," the boy whispered. "They are." Keanu waited a moment. He didn't rush. He knew that sometimes you have to wait for people to find their words. Are you getting them for someone? Keanu asked. It was a simple question, but the way he asked it made it seem important. He wasn't just making small talk. He genuinely wanted to know. The boy looked down at his sneakers. They were dirty at the toes. He scuffed the floor a little bit. They are for my mom, he said softly. Keanu nodded his head slowly. Your mom? He repeated. That is a good choice. Moms love flowers. The boy looked up, his eyes shining a little bit. He seemed to want to say more. Usually, adults just walk by. They didn't stop to ask who he was buying flowers for. But this man was listening. The boy took a deep breath and let it out slowly. She is in the hospital, he said. The words hung in the air between them. She has been there for a long time. The shopkeeper stopped arranging the flowers she was holding. She listened to. The shop seemed to get quieter, even though the street noise was still outside. Is she feeling okay? Keanu asked gently. The boy shook his head. Not really, he said. His voice shook a little, but he kept going. The doctors say she needs to rest, but she is sad. She looks at the wall all day and she looks sad. I wanted to bring her something. Something alive. Something that smells good. I thought if she saw these flowers, maybe she would smile again. It was such a pure thought. A child sees a problem and wants to fix it with something beautiful. Adults think about medicine and bills and treatments, but this boy just wanted his mother to smile. He wanted to bring a piece of the outside world. Something green and white and alive into the cold, sterile room where she was stuck. He wanted to break the sadness with a flower. Keanu looked at the boy with a deep respect. He saw the love in the kid's heart. It was a brave thing to do, to walk into a shop alone and try to buy something so expensive with a handful of coins. It showed how much he cared. That is very thoughtful of you, Keanu said. I am sure she would love them. The boy looked back at his pile of money. The moment of hope faded, replaced by the hard reality again. He looked at the price tag on the orchids. He looked at the pennies. It was impossible. He let out a long, shaky breath. It was the sound of defeat. I don't have enough, the boy said. It wasn't a question. It was a fact. He said it like he was admitting a mistake. I thought I had enough, but I counted wrong. Or maybe the price went up. I don't know. He started to scoop the coins back into his hand. His movements were jerky, like he was trying to get it over with quickly. It's okay, he said, mostly to himself. I can get the daisies. They are nice, too. She will like the daisies. He pointed to the small bucket of yellow flowers on the counter. They were cheerful flowers, but they were cheap. They were $5. They were not the elegant orchids. They were not the grand gesture he wanted to make. He was settling because he had to. It is a terrible feeling to have to lower your dreams just because you don't have enough paper. Money in your pocket. The shopkeeper watched him. She felt a pang in her own heart. She saw the boy trying to be brave, trying to convince himself that the cheaper flowers were just as good. But she knew they weren't the same. She knew he wanted to give his mother the best. We can wrap those daisies up nicely for you, the shopkeeper offered kindly. She wanted to help, but she couldn't just give away the expensive flowers. She had a business to run. The boy nodded, but his face was sad. Yeah, please. Keanu was still standing there. He watched the boy's hand push the pile of coins toward the daisies. He watched the boy's shoulders slump forward. The energy in the room had changed. It went from hopeful to heavy in just a few seconds. Keanu knew that feeling of not having enough. He knew what it felt like to be short on cash when you needed something important. It makes you feel small. It makes you feel like the world is against you. But looking at this boy, Keanu didn't see a kid who was short on cash. He saw a hero. He saw someone who was trying his hardest. He saw a love that was bigger than a pile of coins. The boy had saved every penny he had. He gave everything he had, and it still wasn't enough. That didn't seem fair to Keanu. The world is often unfair. But maybe, just for today, in this small flower shop, it didn't have to be. He looked at the orchids one more time. They were tall and graceful, with white petals that looked like silk. They were perfect. They were exactly what the boy wanted. They were exactly what the mother deserved. The boy was counting out the $5 for the daisies now. He was careful with it. 1, 2, 3, he whispered. He didn't want to make a mistake again. He was holding back tears. You could see his throat tightening up. He was trying so hard to be a grown-up, to handle the disappointment without crying. Keanu looked at the shopkeeper. She met his eyes. She could see something shifting in his expression. She saw him set his jaw, a sign he had made a decision. She waited to see what he would do. The air felt electric, like the moment before a storm breaks. But it was a good storm. It was a moment of kindness waiting to happen. The boy finished counting the money. Here, he said, sliding the coins across the glass. For the daisies. He looked at the orchids one last time, a final goodbye glance. He was mourning the loss of those flowers. He was mourning the smile he wouldn't see on his mother's face when she saw the big bouquet. He was just a kid, and the weight of the world was sitting on that glass counter. Keanu took a deep breath. He pushed himself off the counter where he was leaning. He reached into his pocket. The movement was slow and deliberate. He wasn't going to let this happen. He wasn't going to let this boy walk out of here with second best. Not today. He had the power to change this ending, and he was going to use it. The boy looked up, hearing the movement, wondering what was going to happen next. The boy continued, his eyes finding the floor again. She used to have a garden, he said quietly. Before she got sick, we had roses in the backyard. She would be out there every morning, talking to them. She said they liked the company. He let out a sad little laugh. Sounds silly, right? Talking to flowers? Keanu shook his head immediately. No, he said firmly. It's not silly. My sister. She liked gardens, too. Plants are good listeners. They don't interrupt. They just grow. The boy looked up, surprised by the answer. He hadn't expected this stranger to understand. Most adults would have laughed, or just nodded politely. But Keanu meant it. He understood the quiet comfort of nature. Yeah, the boy said, his voice a little stronger. She misses the garden. The hospital room is just white. There is no color. I wanted to bring the color to her. Looked at the white orchids. These are white too, but they are pretty white. They look clean. Like snow, Keanu looked at the orchids with fresh eyes. The boy was right. They did look clean and pure. They were perfect for a sick room. They wouldn't be too loud or too bright. They would just be peaceful. It is snow inside the room, Keanu agreed. That is a beautiful way to think about it. The boy sighed, his happiness at the thought crashing into the reality of the price tag again. But they are expensive, he muttered. $45? I only have 32. He looked at his small pile of money. It looked so pathetic next to the price tag. It was just metal and paper. It couldn't buy the snow for his mother's room. He felt a wave of embarrassment. He felt like everyone was staring at his poverty. He quickly scooped up the coins, the metal clinking loudly. I'll just take the daisies, he said, his voice hard now, trying to cover up his hurt. She likes yellow. Yellow is happy. He was trying to convince himself so hard. It was painful to watch. He was bargaining with his own heart, trying to lower his expectations so he wouldn't be disappointed. But his eyes betrayed him. They kept darting back to the cooler. He wanted the orchids. He needed the orchids. The shopkeeper picked up the yellow flowers. She tied a piece of string around them. These are very cheerful, she said, trying to help. They smell like sunshine. The boy forced a smile. It was a painful, fake smile that didn't reach his eyes. Yeah, sunshine. She needs sunshine. He held out his hand to take the small bunch of daisies. They were floppy and casual. They weren't the grand state. The shopkeeper didn't ask any questions. She didn't need to. She saw the look in Keanu's eyes, a look that said he was doing this not for attention, but because it was the right thing to do. She reached out and took the crisp bills from his hand. Her fingers brushed against his, and for a second, they shared a silent understanding. They were partners in this small act of kindness. She smoothed out the money on the counter and opened the register drawer. The ding sounding different this time, happier, lighter. All right, she said, her voice warm. Let's make this perfect. The boy stood frozen by the counter. He looked from the money to Keanu and then back to the money. His brain was trying to catch up with what was happening. It felt like the world had tilted sideways. Only a minute ago, he was walking out with a small bunch of daisies, feeling like he had failed. Now, the movie star was buying the expensive flowers. But why? The boy couldn't understand. He knew who Keanu was. Everyone knew who Keanu was. He had seen him in movies fighting bad guys and saving the world. But seeing him in real life, wearing a normal hoodie, standing in a quiet flower shop, was very different. He didn't look like a superhero. He looked like a nice man, but why? The boy finally managed to whisper. His voice cracked a little. "You don't even know me." Keanu turned away from the register and looked at the boy. He didn't smile a big, fake Hollywood smile. It was a small, soft smile. The kind of smile you give to a friend when they are having a hard time. He leaned his elbow on the counter, getting down to the boy's eye level again. He wanted to be equal. He didn't want to stand over him. "You're right," Keanu said. "I don't know you, but I know that look on your face. I know what it feels like to really want to do something for someone you love, and to feel like you can't." The boy looked down at his sneakers. He kicked the floor lightly. "I just wanted her to smile," he said, his voice very quiet. "She is in so much pain. She doesn't say it, but I know. I hear her crying at night when she thinks I'm asleep. The nurses are nice, but it's not home. I wanted to bring her something beautiful." Keanu listened to every word. He didn't look around the shop. He didn't check his phone. He gave the boy his full attention. It is a rare thing for a child to be truly listened to by an adult, especially a stranger. The boy felt seen. It was a strange feeling, but it made his chest feel tight. "Hospitals are hard places," Keanu said gently. "They smell like medicine and cleaning supplies. The walls are usually white or gray. It can make you feel like the color is draining out of the world." The boy looked up, surprised. "Yes, exactly," he said. "That's it. It's gray. I just wanted to bring some life in there." Keanu nodded slowly. He looked away for a moment, staring at a vase of roses on the shelf. His eyes got a little bit distant, like he was looking into the past. He was remembering his own sister. He remembered the long hallways, the beeping machines, and the feeling of helplessness. He remembered sitting by a bed, holding a hand, wishing he could do more to fix the pain. He knew exactly what the boy was trying to do. He wasn't just buying flowers. He was trying to fight the sickness with beauty. He was trying to say, "I love you," louder than the disease. "I had a sister," Keanu said softly. He looked back at the boy. "Her name was Kim. She got sick too. She spent a lot of time in hospitals. She was very brave, much braver than me. But it was hard. It was really hard." The boy's eyes went wide. He didn't know this about the actor. He just saw the action movies. He didn't know that this famous person had felt the same sadness, the same fear. Did she get better? Keanu paused. He took a slow breath. "She fought for a long time," he said carefully. "And yes, for a while things got better. But it was a long road. We spent a lot of time in those rooms. I remember one day someone brought her flowers. It wasn't a huge bouquet, just a few simple wildflowers in a jar. But I remember how she looked at them. She held them like they were the most precious thing in the world. She said they made the room feel less like a hospital and more like a garden." He looked at the white orchids in the shopkeeper's hands as she began to trim the stems. For a few minutes, she wasn't a patient. She was just a girl looking at flowers. That is a powerful thing. The boy swallowed hard. He was picturing his mother holding the orchids. He could see her face lighting up. He could see the gray room turning white and bright. So Keanu continued, "When I saw you counting your money, and I saw how much you cared, I knew I had to help. Because your mom deserves to feel that way. She deserves to have a moment where she isn't sick. She deserves to just be a mom admiring flowers." The shopkeeper was working quickly now, but with great care. She took the orchids and added sprigs of soft green ferns around the base. She added some small white flowers called baby's breath, which made the bouquet look like a cloud. It was stunning. It looked magical. It was worth every penny of the $45, and probably more. "You know," Keanu said, watching the shopkeeper work, "it's not about the money. The money is just paper. It comes and it goes. But this feeling of wanting to help someone you love, that is real. That stays. You did a good thing coming here today. You should be proud of that. The boy didn't know what to say. His throat felt lumpy. He felt a mix of gratitude and relief washing over him. It was like a heavy weight being lifted off his shoulders. He had walked in with the weight of the world on his back, and now he was standing there, feeling light, but he still felt a little shy. He looked at the daisies he had put down on the counter. They looked so small compared to the orchids. Can I still have the daisies? The boy asked shyly. I mean, you bought the orchids. But I paid for the daisies, Keanu laughed. It was a warm, rumbling laugh. You really want those daisies, huh? Well, the boy said, thinking, they are yellow. And maybe the orchids are for Mom, but the daisies could be for the lady in the room next to her. She doesn't get any visitors. She just sits by the window. I hear her talking to the nurses sometimes. She seems lonely. Keanu stopped laughing. He looked at the boy with total amazement. This kid wasn't just thinking about his own mother. He was thinking about a stranger too. Even when he had nothing, he was trying to give to others. That is rare. That is special. You are incredible, Keanu said. He shook his head in disbelief. Yes, you keep the daisies. You give them to the lady next door. That is a wonderful idea. The shopkeeper finished wrapping the orchids. She used a special thick white paper that crinkled when she folded it. She tied it with a wide satin ribbon. It looked professional and expensive. She placed it on the counter with great care, right next to the boy's small pile of daisies. Here we go, she said happily. One snowstorm for Mom. The boy looked at the bouquet. It was even better than the one he had seen in the cooler. It was bigger. It was fuller. It was perfect. He reached out to touch the ribbon, but he pulled his hand back, afraid to mess it up. He looked at Keanu. He realized that this man, this stranger, had just made a miracle happen. But the boy also knew that he couldn't just take it. He felt like he needed to do something. He couldn't pay him back, but maybe he could say the right words. I can't pay you back, the boy said, his voice serious. I don't have $45. I only have. Well, you saw? Keanu shook his head firmly. No, he said. I don't want your money. Keep your savings. Buy yourself a soda or a comic book. Or save it for the next time you want to buy flowers. But I have to do something, the boy insisted. My dad says you don't take things for free. That's not how the world works. Your dad is right, Keanu said. Usually, but today is different. Today is a kindness day. And the only way you can pay me back is by promising me something. The boy nodded eagerly. Anything. What do you want? An autograph. Do you want me to tell everyone I met you? Keanu smiled again. No autographs. And you don't need to tell anyone. Just promise me that you will give those to your mom and tell her that she is loved. Tell her that a stranger saw her son working hard to make her smile and that it made his day. That is all I want. That is the payment. The boy took a deep breath. He stuck out his hand, trying to look professional. I promise, he said. I will tell her exactly that. I will tell her that a hero helped me. Keanu took the boy's small hand in his and shook it. His grip was firm and warm. It wasn't a hero, Keanu said quietly. Just a guy who likes flowers. Just like you, shopkeeper handed the bouquet to the boy. It was light, but to him, it felt heavy with importance. He held it in one arm and picked up his daisies with the other hand. He looked like a delivery boy who had won the lottery. Okay, the boy said, looking at the door. I have to go. Visiting hours ends soon. Go, Keanu said. Go make her smile. The boy turned and ran to the door. He pushed it open, and the bell chimed loudly. He burst out into the sunshine, moving fast. He was eager now. He wasn't dragging his feet anymore. He had a mission. Keanu stood by the counter and watched him through the glass window. He watched the boy run down the street, holding the flowers high so he wouldn't crush them. He saw the boy dodge a slow-walking couple and jump over a crack in the sidewalk. He looked full of energy, full of hope. The shopkeeper leaned on the counter next to Keanu. They both watched the boy disappear into the crowd. The shop felt quiet again, but it was a good quiet. A peaceful quiet. The boy ran down the sidewalk, his sneakers hitting the pavement with a rhythm that matched his racing heart. The world around him was a blur of colors and sounds, but his focus was entirely on the bouquet in his arms. It was big, much bigger than he expected, and the white petals brushed against his chin with every step. He was careful not to crush them. He held them like he was carrying a fragile bird. The sun was warm on his back, and for the first time that day, the heavy feeling in his chest was gone. It had been replaced by a lightness, a bubbling excitement that made him want to jump over the cracks in the sidewalk. He reached the crosswalk and had to stop. The red hand was flashing, telling him to wait. He bounced on the balls of his feet, impatient. He looked down at the flowers. They were so beautiful. The shopkeeper had done an amazing job. The green ferns made the white orchids look even brighter, and the ribbon was smooth and shiny under his fingers. He still couldn't believe it. He kept replaying the scene in the shop over and over in his mind. The man, the money, the kind words. It felt like a dream, but the weight of the flowers in his arms was very real. When the light changed, he took off again. The hospital was just a few blocks away. It was a huge building made of brick and glass, looming over the street. As he got closer, the environment began to change. The busy sounds of the city seemed to fade away, replaced by the quieter, more serious atmosphere of the medical center. The air here smelled different, cleaner, but also sharp. It smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. The boy slowed down as he reached the main entrance. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, welcoming him into the cool, air-conditioned lobby. He hugged the flowers tighter to his chest. The lobby was full of people sitting in plastic chairs, some looking worried, some reading magazines, some just staring at the floor. A nurse walked by, pushing a cart with a squeaky wheel. It was a place where people waited for news, good or bad. The boy walked past the front desk, giving a quick nod to the security guard, who knew him by sight. He didn't stop. He headed straight for the elevators. He pressed the button and waited, tapping his foot. The elevator dinged, and the doors opened. He stepped inside, along with a few other people. They were quiet, looking at the numbers lighting up above the door. The boy glanced at one of the women standing next to him. She was looking at the floor, looking tired and sad. He looked at his flowers. He remembered what he had told the man in the shop about the yellow daisies. He shifted the heavy orchid bouquet to one arm and reached into his pocket with his other hand. He pulled out the small bunch of yellow daisies. They were simple and happy. When the elevator stopped on the 4th floor, the boy stepped out into the hallway. It was long and lined with doors to patient rooms. The floor was polished to a shine, and the lights were bright, almost too bright. He walked past the nurse's station. One of the nurses looked up and smiled when she saw him. "Back already?" she asked. "And look at that beautiful bouquet." "It's for my mom," the boy said, beaming with pride. "For her room?" He walked down the hall until he reached room 402. The door was slightly open. He took a deep breath to calm himself down. He wanted to look happy, not out of breath. He pushed the door open gently. Inside, the room was quiet. The blinds were drawn, letting in just a little bit of afternoon light. The air smelled like medicine and lotion. His mother was lying in the bed, propped up on pillows. She was looking out the window at the parking lot. She looked very small in the big hospital bed. Her skin was pale, and there were tubes running from her arm to a machine that beeped rhythmically next to the bed. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept in days. She turned her head slowly when she heard the door open. When she saw her son, her face softened. "Hello, sweetie," she whispered. Her voice was raspy and weak. "You're back." The boy walked over to the side of the bed. "I brought you something," he said. He couldn't hold it in any longer. He lifted the giant bouquet of white orchids up and placed it gently on the table over her bed. His mother's eyes went wide. She stared at the flowers, blinking as if she couldn't believe they were real. They were huge and elegant, filling the small space with life. "Oh," she breathed out. "Oh my." She reached out a shaking hand and touched one of the white petals. It felt cool and smooth. They are magnificent," she said. But how? These look so expensive. The boy smiled, a big, genuine smile that reached his eyes. A nice man helped me, he said. I was at the flower shop and I was counting my money, but I didn't have enough. He saw me. He bought them for you. His mother looked at him, then back at the flowers. Tears welled up in her eyes, making them sparkle. He did that. Just for us? Yes, the boy nodded. He said you deserve to have the best. He said that flowers make a hospital room feel like a garden. The mother wiped a tear from her cheek. She looked at the white blooms for a long time, taking in their beauty. The boy was right. The room felt different. The grayness was gone. The beeping machine seemed quieter. The white orchids glowed in the dim light, bringing a sense of peace to the sterile room. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like a patient. She felt like a woman who had been given a wonderful gift. She felt loved. That was very kind of him, she said softly. Please thank him for me if you ever see him again. I already did, the boy said. But he didn't want any credit. He just wanted you to smile. Oh. And she did smile. It was a small smile, but it was real. It lit up her face in a way that medicine couldn't. She looked at her son, her heart full of love. He was such a good boy. She worried about him, growing up in hospitals and waiting rooms, seeing her sick all the time. She worried that he was missing out on being a kid. But looking at him now, standing there with such pride and joy, she knew he was going to be okay. He had a good heart. The boy stood there for a moment, watching her enjoy the flowers. He felt a warm glow inside. He had done it. He had made her smile. The heavy weight of sadness that he had been carrying for weeks was finally lifting. He looked around the room and then remembered the other bundle in his hand. I have to go give these to someone, he said, holding up the yellow daisies. His mother looked surprised. More flowers? Hung, the boy said. For the lady next door. She doesn't have any visitors. I thought she might like them. His mother felt another wave of emotion, this time even stronger. Her son, who had so little, was giving away what he had. He was thinking of others even in the middle of his own struggle. That is a wonderful idea, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Go on. I'll be right here looking at my orchids. The boy walked out into the hallway and closed the door softly behind him. He went to the room next door, room 44. He peeked inside. An elderly woman was sitting in a chair by the window, staring out at the nothingness. The room was empty of flowers, of cards, of color. It looked lonely. The boy knocked on the open door gently. The woman turned her head. She looked surprised to see a child standing there. Excuse me, the boy said politely. I bought these for you. He walked in and held out the yellow daisies. They were bright and cheerful, a burst of sunshine in the dull room. The woman stared at him, then at the flowers. For me? She asked. Her voice was creaky like an old door hinge. Yes, the boy said. They are daisies. They smell like sunshine. The old woman reached out and took the flowers. Her hands were wrinkled and spotted with age, but she held the flowers gently. She brought them up to her nose and inhaled deeply. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, there were tears in the corners, but a smile on her face. Nobody has brought me flowers in years, she whispered. Thank you. Thank you so much. You're welcome, the boy said. He felt shy, but happy. Have a good day. He walked out of the room, leaving the lady with her yellow flowers. He walked back toward the elevators, feeling lighter than air. He had done it. He had made his mom smile, and he had made a stranger happy too. It was the best feeling in the world. Meanwhile, back on the busy street outside the flower shop, Keanu Reeves was walking slowly. He had his own bouquet of sunflowers in his hand. They were bright yellow and wild, sticking out in every direction. He didn't have a specific destination in mind. He just wanted to walk. He passed by people looking at their phones, construction workers drilling into the pavement, and tourists taking pictures of tall buildings. The city was chaotic and noisy. But inside, Keanu felt quiet. He thought about the boy. He wondered if he had made it to the hospital on time. He wondered if the mother liked the orchids. He hoped that for a few moments, the pain and worry of the sickness had faded away, replaced by the beauty of the flowers. He stopped by a trash can to tie his shoe. A young guy walked by wearing a band t-shirt and headphones. The guy did a double take, stopping in his tracks. "Whoa," the guy said, pulling his headphones down. Are you Keanu Reeves?" Keanu stood up and smiled. He didn't sigh or roll his eyes. He didn't try to hide. He just stood there, a normal guy holding sunflowers. "Yeah, hi," he said. "That's awesome, man," the guy said, a big grin on his face. "I loved your last movie. Can I get a selfie?" "Sure," Keanu said. He handed the sunflowers to the guy so he could hold them, and they leaned in together for a photo. The guy's hand was shaking a little with excitement. "Thanks, man," the guy said, handing the flowers back. "You're the best. You're ALU." The sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the city streets. The rush hour was starting, and cars were bumper to bumper, their headlights flickering on as the day prepared to turn into evening. But the boy didn't mind the crowd. He walked with a bounce in his step, a new energy flowing through him. He felt taller, as if he had grown a few inches in the last hour. Leaving the hospital felt different this time. Usually, when he walked out those sliding glass doors, he felt heavy. He felt the weight of the sickness and the smell of the medicine clinging to his clothes. He would walk home with his head down, dreading the quiet of an empty house. But today, he held his head high. He replayed the look on his mother's face over and over in his mind, the surprise, the tears, and finally that beautiful smile. It was better than any movie he had ever seen. It was real. He passed a corner store and thought about stopping to buy a soda with the change he had left. But he decided against it. He didn't need the soda. He was fueled by the happiness of what he had done. He stuck his hands in his pockets and felt the crumpled dollar bills that were still there. The money he had saved so carefully wasn't gone for nothing. It had turned into something magical. He realized then that money is just a tool. It's what you do with it that matters. And today, his small pile of coins, combined with the kindness of a stranger, had moved mountains. He arrived at his small apartment building. It was old, and the paint was peeling, but it was home. He climbed the stairs slowly, counting the steps. When he unlocked the front door, the apartment was quiet, just like he expected it to be. The sink was piled with dishes from the morning, and the school bag was dumped on the floor. It was a bit messy, but instead of feeling overwhelmed by it, the boy just ignored it. He walked to his room and dropped his backpack on his bed. He sat down for a moment and looked out the window at the city lights turning on. He felt a sense of peace settle over him. He knew that tomorrow his mom would still be sick. He knew that the road ahead was going to be hard. There would be more bad days and more long nights at the hospital. But today was a good day. And sometimes one good day is enough to give you the strength to keep going. He took out a piece of paper and a pencil from his desk. He started to draw. He drew a picture of a flower shop and a tall man giving a boy a big bouquet of white flowers. He drew it so he would never forget this day. Back at the hospital, the sun had completely set, and the room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of the machines and the lights from the parking lot outside. The mother lay in her bed, but she wasn't staring at the wall anymore. She was looking at the orchids. The white petals seemed to glow in the darkness. They were elegant and strong. A nurse came in to check her vitals. She moved quietly, trying not to disturb the patient. But as she adjusted the foredrip, she stopped and noticed the flowers. "Wow," the nurse whispered. "Those are stunning. Did someone send those?" The mother smiled, a tired but genuine smile. "My son," she said softly. "He brought them." "He is quite the young man," the nurse said, checking the monitor. "He must love you very much." "He does," the mother said, her voice full of emotion. "He told me a story about how a stranger helped him buy them, that there are good people in the world. It made me feel safe. It made me feel like even if I'm not here to take care of him, the world will be kind to him." The nurse patted her hand gently. "The world is full of good people," she agreed. "And that boy of yours, he has a good heart. He has a bright future." The mother closed her eyes and breathed in the faint scent of the orchids. The smell was sweet and clean, pushing away the antiseptic smell of the hospital. For the first time in a long time, She didn't feel afraid of the night. She felt surrounded by love. She drifted off to sleep, dreaming of gardens and white flowers, while the orchids stood watch over her like silent guardians. Meanwhile, across the city, Keanu had reached his destination. It was a quiet park on the edge of town, an old place with oak trees that had branches stretching out like giant arms. Beyond the trees was a cemetery. It wasn't a spooky place. It was peaceful and green, a place where the noise of the city faded into a gentle rustle of leaves. Keanu walked along the gravel path. He wasn't wearing his hood anymore. He carried the bouquet of sunflowers he had bought. They were bright yellow, stark against the green grass and the gray stones. He walked until he came to a spot under a large tree. He stopped there and stood still for a moment. In front of him were two headstones, side by side. They were simple and clean. Keanu looked at the names etched into the stone. He didn't cry. He had done enough crying in the past. Now he mostly felt a quiet longing, a wish that he could just sit down and have a conversation with the people who were resting there. He bent down and placed the sunflowers gently against the base of the stone. The yellow petals looked vibrant in the shade. "Hey," he said softly, "I brought you guys some flowers." He sat down on the grass, crossing his legs. He didn't care if his pants got dirty. He just wanted to be there. "I had a pretty good day today," he started, talking to the stone as if they were sitting right in front of him. "I met a kid, a young boy. He was trying to buy flowers for his mom. She's in the hospital." He paused, plucking a piece of grass and twirling it around his finger. He reminded me of us. He reminded me of, well, everything. He just wanted to make her smile. He was trying so hard. Keanu looked up at the leaves of the tree moving in the breeze. I helped him out. I bought the flowers. You should have seen his face. He was so happy, and the way he talked about his mom. It was pure love. It made me think of you. It made me think of how much we loved each other. He took a deep breath. The air was cool here. It smelled like earth and rain. I think that's why we're here, you know? To help each other out. We can't fix everything. We can't stop people from getting sick. We can't stop the bad stuff from happening. But we can buy flowers. We can be kind. We can make a heavy day a little bit lighter. He sat there for a long time, just watching the shadows lengthen. He thought about the boy running down the street with the orchids. He thought about the mother holding them in the hospital room. He felt a connection between them all. It was a circle of caring. He gave love to the boy gave love to his mother, and that love spread out into the world. It was invisible, but it was real. "I hope she gets better," Keanu whispered to the silence. "I really do." After a while, the wind picked up a little bit, rustling the leaves louder. Keanu stood up. He brushed the dirt off his pants. He looked down at the sunflowers one last time. "Okay," he said. "I have to go. I'll visit again soon." He turned and walked back down the path. He didn't look back, but he felt a sense of closure. Visiting the cemetery wasn't about saying goodbye. It was about remembering where he came from and carrying those memories with him. It was about keeping the love alive as he walked out of the park and back toward the city lights. The stars began to appear in the sky above him. They were faint, fighting against the city glow, but they were there. Keanu put his hands in his pockets and started the long walk home. He felt tired, but it was a good kind of tired. The kind you feel after a day of honest work. He thought about how fast the news traveled these days. Maybe tomorrow, someone would write a story about it. Keanu Reeves buys flowers for kid. People would read it on their phones while drinking their morning coffee. They would smile and say, "That's a nice story." They would share it on social media. They would call him a hero. But as he walked down the sidewalk, passing a closed shoe store and a lit-up pizza shop, he knew the truth. It wasn't about being a hero. It wasn't about the fame. It was just a human moment. A moment where two people crossed paths and one of them decided to lift the other one up. That was the hidden story. The real story wasn't the flowers. It was the empathy. It was the understanding that we are all walking through this life together, fighting our own battles, and that sometimes a single act of kindness can change the entire trajectory of someone's day. The boy would grow up. and he would never forget the day a stranger bought him orchids for his mother. He would remember that feeling of being seen, of being helped. And maybe one day, when he was older and saw someone else struggling, he would stop and help them. He would buy the coffee. He would give the directions. He would be the kind stranger. That was the real magic. That was how the world changed. Not with movies or explosions, but with small, quiet moments of love in a flower shop. Keanu stopped at a street corner. The light was red. He stood there, waiting, just a regular guy in a hoodie. A taxi drove past splashing water from a recent puddle, but Keanu stepped back just in time. He laughed a little to himself. Life was messy. It was complicated, but it was beautiful. The light turned green. He walked across the street. The city was loud again, sirens wailing in the distance, music thumping from a passing car. But Keanu walked with a peaceful rhythm. He knew that somewhere, in a quiet hospital room, a mother was sleeping with a smile on her face because of a bunch of white orchids. And that was enough. That was everything. The city lights blurred into a stream of colors as he disappeared into the crowd. Just another person making his way home in the big city. But the warmth of the afternoon stayed with him, a gentle reminder that in a world full of noise, kindens.